was that then President Trump was derelict in his duty by taking too long to publicly state the rioters should stop rioting at the U.S. Capitol. And the committee last night, they kind of went through that afternoon, the now infamous 187 minutes between Donald Trump ending his rally on the Ellipse and when he made his appeal from the Rose Garden for these rioters to go home. And they talked about him watching the coverage on television for the White House dining room just a few steps from the Oval Office. And Kevin, there was a lot of, I think, compelling testimony last night, and among them was the number of law enforcement officers, Secret Service agents, who thought they were going to die as the rioters were coming into the Capitol building. When they breached the Capitol, started smashing through the windows, and that kind of compelling statements coming out. However, I don't think it started all that well with Benny Thompson's statement. I think he completely mischaracterized when he said that Donald Trump didn't care about these rioters who were killing police officers. They were in the midst of killing police. That didn't happen. They were not out there killing police officers on that day, but it was violent, that's for sure.
Yeah, Tom, I watched the big primetime finale that isn't really a finale because the hearings will keep going until the November primary election. The show, and it was a produced show, showed me that Donald Trump was unpresidential in those 3 hours after the rally. He looked like a guy desperate to hold on to power. He looked like a guy who put himself before the people. But what did we learn that was new? You talked about the Secret Service who thought their lives were in danger. We knew it was dangerous out there. We saw that day, that Donald Trump took 3 hours to go public and tell the rioters to go home. We knew that as well. That Mike Pence was in danger? Yep, we knew that too. That Donald Trump did not want to admit that he lost the election. He still doesn't, so we knew that. The eighth hearing provided evidence, again, aimed at convincing America to never vote for Donald Trump again. In my opinion, they did little to get to the truth of what happened on January 6th in a way to make sure that it never happens again. That's what I was hoping the hearings would do.
Yeah.
Is it possible, could it be possible that a really good TV producer could make the case that the dereliction of duty is being committed by the committee members who are wasting taxpayers' dollars for purely political reasons? I bet a really good TV producer could make it look that way.
Sure.
I'm not saying it happened. I'm just saying they can make it look that way. Let's bring in Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist and attorney. Hey, Roshini, how are you?
Oh my gosh, I love everything you've been saying. Everything can be produced and made showier. I mean, even language like this video was spliced together with this video. I mean, that in itself defies rules of evidence. You don't splice things together to get at the accuracy of the matter.
No. And so as you kind of weed through, what is show and what is real, because there is real evidence. There are people testifying. Did you see anything, put your attorney hat on for a second. Did you see anything that should make the Department of Justice jump up and charge the former president with dereliction of duty?
Well, yes, but here's what I'll say. Yes, if you take everything this committee is doing as 100% accurate and 100% committed to discerning the truth, which I think you've heard from me say before, I do not think that's what they're doing. So what I do know is that when you show people video and you keep on this repetitive action of like every time we've got never before seen this and new witnesses and new testimony and we're disguising this guy's voice, I mean, every time it's just that the cumulative effect now could start to convince some people of something, whether it happened or not, the way this committee wants us to believe it happened. So that is what I caution. Again, I'm not a huge fan of Donald Trump. I think what he showed on that day is he was a big crybaby and he couldn't get over what was happening around him. That, to me, is what was happening with Donald Trump. I'm not sure if there was dereliction of duty in the formal sense, in the technical term of that, and whether that warrants some sort of criminal charge. Because, look, we know that Mike Pence was making calls. Mike Pence was saying, hey, get the military down here. That's what a vice president does when a president is incapacitated in some way, right? As well as, I think we also have to go in and look at what is the traditional duty of the president when people are possibly exercising their free speech rights, their right to gather, assemble, protest, free speech without violence. There is an argument to be made, and this is where we've never heard from Donald Trump or his attorneys on this point. maybe he actually believed that's what they were doing, some sort of peaceable march to the Capitol. I mean, we now know that's not what went down, but I can't get into his mind back on January 6, 2021. And I think what this committee has been doing is to try to make us believe they know what was in his brain. And I don't think they've done that.
There was much made of Donald Trump not calling Homeland Security or any other security advisors. I think he should have, but the breach was on TV. There's a good chance they were aware. I would have been more convinced if they had someone come up and testify that Homeland Security was repeatedly calling Donald Trump for direction, but he refused to take the call. But we didn't see that. We saw them say that Donald Trump was watching TV and he saw what was going on and people were telling him to make a statement and he didn't call anyone. Is his inaction enough to charge?
See, I don't think so. I mean, the lawyer in me says no. I mean, of course he should have known better. Of course there are so many things he should have done. But in that moment, so if we jump back to that day and those hours or those 187 minutes, in those moments, we didn't know what we have seen and we know now. And that's the lens that's unfair to put on anyone, president or regular citizen. You have to look at what was happening in that moment and where was the intent in that moment. You know, usually if someone is convicted of a crime or in the first place charged with a crime, it is because the charging authority believes there is an intent to do wrong. And that's really the crux of this. And so all the bells and whistles and, you know, high-end Hollywood producers putting on these congressional hearings, it doesn't really get at the intent. And I haven't heard a lot about those words. We've been told what Donald Trump was doing or he led this thing. We never have really heard words of this was his intent, you know, minute by minute or hour by hour.
Right. But they, as you said, they carefully craft their narrative and they use phrases like, you know, quote, he summoned the mob to Washington, D.C. He then gathered the armed mob and sent them to the Capitol. And they use the phrasing of being armed and heavily armed and a violent, peaceful. They sent them to the Capitol to do what they were going to do, in which he knew what what he was calling them to do. That kind of language, as you said, if you repeat that often, frequently, people are going to believe that's exactly what happened. That's what was in his mind. Do you think they did that successfully last night to convince maybe some independents that this is in fact what was in Donald Trump's mind?
Yeah, I mean, part of what I saw, and you know, and then now the analysis of it in the aftermath is they really had to pull out all the stops last night, right? I mean, it was hearing number 8. Here's my point. And guess what? We get round 2 of this after Labor Day. I mean, this is crazy. So if you really have a good case, I mean, any lawyer is going to tell you you don't need 8 different events or hearings or trials or whatever the word is. So we just wrapped number 8 and they brought out all these salacious things. And again, I say this not because I'm on Donald Trump's side. I'm looking at the law and how this would be interpreted in a court of law. If there were a real judge who's interpreting real laws and real charges, they would be like, we don't need 8 different moments in court, people, if you really have a case.
Right, exactly. And it should have been spelled out that first night. That first primetime special, it should have been all spelled out on that
lead with
2
your
hour.
best.
Right.
Lead with your best stuff. That's what they teach us in TV, Tom.
Absolutely. You bury the lead, is what they would say. We appreciate you. Roshini Rajkumar, political strategist and attorney. Thanks for sharing your insight and watching it along with all of us as well. Thanks so much, Roshini.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
All right. You too.